now. Hi, everyone. We'll get started in a few seconds, but as you're coming in, you'll notice we don't have everyone's video on. If you could just please not turn on your video because we are anticipating 65. That's a lot of people and a lot of videos.
I think it's interesting how people get into certain roles and do certain things.
Hi, everyone. If you're just joining us, we'll get started and probably we'll give it another minute or two. We are expecting 65 to join us. So please keep yourself muted and turn off your video just so we can control the chaos. For those of you who joined us early, I'm sorry if you have to hear me repeat this once again. We are up to 43 participants. We still have some folks joining us. We are asking all of you to mute your microphones and turn off your video because we are expecting a pretty large crowd for this morning's discussion. And we'll get started probably, let's give folks maybe another minute to join us. We've almost hit the 50 mark, so that's great. And we are asking that folks turn off their video and make sure you mute just because we are expecting a large crowd this morning. And they're still coming. Okay, all it's 11:03, so let's get started. We'll continue to let folks in as they come. But first, happy Friday and welcome to the first Let's Talk About conversation of 2023. And wow, we really started this series of conversations with a bang. Today will be a little different than some of our previous programs if you've taken part in these series of conversations. Because we do have more than 65 folks registered. I know we already have more than 50 on the call right now. So this is obviously a topic of great interest and we'll get to it in just a minute. A little housekeeping. Because of the number of people that we have involved, please post questions in the chat. We're really going to try to use the chat function. As each of the speakers are talking, feel free, keep putting those questions in the chat. After all three of our speakers have presented, I'll come back on and we'll facilitate a Q&A based on those questions and any more that you may have come in. And feel free to put comments in there as well. We ask that everyone mute their microphones and turn off their videos throughout the next hour, as we do think this will keep us more streamlined and focused. But right now, I want to welcome our three speakers who've joined us this morning. In order of appearance, the first to join us will be Brad Hoehne, who is director of the John Glenn Astronomy Park, and Brad is the one who is floating in space. Our second speaker, a familiar face, Matt MacLaren, director of TourismOhio. And our third speaker is Christen Cunningham, who is the planning section supervisor for the Ohio Emergency Management Agency. So as we go, what we are going to do is all of us, except for our speaker, we're going to turn off our videos, and then we'll all pop back up at the end for the discussion. So welcome again, and I'm going to turn things over to Brad.
Hi, gang. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I am going to share my PowerPoint presentation here. Let's hope that this works. You'd think that after 2 years of pandemic, we would have gotten this all smooth. Little bit about me. Once again, my name is Brad Hoehne. I'm the director of the John Glenn Astronomy Park. If you haven't been there, it is an astronomical facility in the Hocking Hills State Park designed to share the wonders of the universe with the public. We have a few telescopes from March until November on clear. Friday and Saturday nights, we do public observing and lecture programs to introduce people to the sky. The most important thing about me for this particular talk is that I am a veteran of 3 total solar eclipses. I have traveled the world to see them. The first one I saw was in Zimbabwe. The second one was in exotic Turkey. Unfortunately, I was very close to where the earthquake happened. And the third one was in extremely exotic Nebraska in 2017. I'm sure that some of you probably witnessed that one as well. Wanted to talk a little bit about solar eclipses in general. I'm the astro nerd here, so I will be doing this. The solar eclipse occurs because of an astonishing celestial coincidence. That celestial coincidence is the fact that the sun is 400 times larger than the moon, but coincidentally, it is almost exactly 400 times further away. So if you do the math, you can actually look up in the sky and see the moon and the sun almost the same size in the sky. And when things are aligned just perfectly, that is, when the sun is when the moon is immediately between the sun and the earth, the moon can actually cast a shadow on the earth. And in fact, if you happen to be in that shadow and nowhere else, day will turn to night and all kinds of weird and spectacular things will happen. It is, from my point of view, I think, and a lot of other people's point of view, the most spectacular thing you can see. Nothing else comes even close. Just to show you, this is a picture of the shadow of the moon on the Earth, taken from the International Space Station. Here's another one taken from the International Space Station showing the shadow of the moon on the Earth. And the one thing you will notice here is that the shadow is actually quite small compared to the Earth. In order to see the total solar eclipse, in order to actually see its most important effects, you have to be in the heart of that shadow, at the very center. If you're not in that, it's not quite the same. So, what do you witness when you see a total solar eclipse? Well, first of all, what will happen is if you happen to be someplace where the moon will be passing in front of the sun from your point of view, because it doesn't happen over all the earth. If you put on a pair of eclipse glasses, which block out most of the light of the sun and make it actually safe to see, you will start to see the moon pass in front of the sun. It'll take a little cookie bite out of it about an hour and a half before the main event. If you look at a telescope that is properly filtered, you do not want to use a telescope on the sun unless it is absolutely properly filtered. You have to know what you're doing. So ask an astronomer to do this for you. You can actually see this as well. You will see that cookie bite over the next 90 minutes or so grow and grow, and this will be the moon slowly covering the surface of the sun. It will actually slowly start to black it out. And if you happen to be in the right place at the right time, that cookie bite will get larger and larger and larger. The sun will get smaller and smaller. Now, if you're looking around during that time, it will seem like a bright sunny day with just something a little bit off. It'll be a little strange. Maybe the sky will appear a little bit darker than normal, but for the most part, it will feel kind of like a sunny day when the sun looks like this in the sky. However, if you look down at the ground, you will start to see these strange shadows on the ground. Everything that has a little pinprick of sunlight passing through it, like a leaf or your fingers held up in front of your hands like that. Some people make little colander cutouts where they create shapes on the grounds. You will see a tiny little projection of the shape of the sun at that point. And that shape will slowly change over the course of the eclipse. And then, whoops, my camera went off. There we go. I hope it came back on. Just before the sun is totally covered, you will get all sorts of weird, strange effects. One of my favorite effects, and I won't go into all of them, but this is one of my favorites, is something called shadow bands. And this is caused by a tiny pinprick of sunlight passing around the edge of the moon, and the shimmering of Earth's atmosphere will cause all the light around you to appear like this ghostly shimmering effect. It is very strange. It's like being at the bottom of a swimming pool and seeing the light on the bottom of the swimming pool. It's one of the weirdest effects. Not a lot of people notice it because they're busy looking up at the sky, but this is a cool thing to actually look for. In the last few seconds before the moon totally covers the sun, a tiny little pinprick of sunlight will pierce its way out through a valley in the moon, and you will get something that is probably the most beautiful thing, I think, in this event. It's called the diamond ring effect. And this tiny little searingly bright pinprick of sunlight, no bigger than a star, will be on the edge of the moon, and the outer atmosphere of the sun will be showing around the limb of the moon just a little bit, something you can't ordinarily see. That outer atmosphere is called the corona, and this will form a seeming diamond ring in the sky. You can actually look at this with your naked eye for a few seconds. It's okay, and it is spectacular. And then finally, when the moon is totally covering the sun, that solar corona will become visible to the naked eye. It'll become this weird, ghostly effect in the night sky. It's almost like the eye of God looking down at you. It is absolutely and totally spectacular. I had a video lined up to show you the reaction that people have to this when they see it. Crowds go nuts. People start weeping. They cheer. They go crazy. I've seen astronomers who have been to 20 of these things weep in amazement because it is so incredibly powerful. I've seen 3 of them. I want to see more of them because they're that absolutely spectacular. Now, this only lasts a few minutes. It only lasts a few minutes. Most solar eclipses are anywhere from about 1 minute. The longest they can get is about 6.5 or 7 minutes or so, if you're really lucky. The one that's going to occur in 2024 will be about 3.5 minutes. So you get only about 3.5 minutes to witness this incredible event. So what happens if you look around? Day turns to night. You can actually start to see some stars in the sky. It's almost like this the sky maybe 20 or 30 minutes after sunset. You get a very deep twilight. It is sunset all around, 360 degrees. You get this weird sunset. This is a picture taken in Chile from a couple of years ago, and you can see the sunset all around you. And in the middle here, that is the shadow of the moon seen from underneath. Right there is the total solar eclipse. It looks like this weird hole in the sky. It's really, really spectacular. And then almost as soon as it began, it feels like 2 heartbeats passed, it ends. And the first question everybody asks once the sun pops out is, when is the next one? I want to see another one. This is amazing. Well, I tell you this, the next one that human beings will be able to see will be on April 8th in 2024. And this band of darkness here is where you will want to be on that day. Now you'll notice that the southern portion of Ohio is not in this band. Down most of Columbus all the way down to the southern portion of Ohio. However, the northern section of Ohio, all running from a line north of Cincinnati all the way up through Cleveland and on into Lake Erie, is a really, really good place to be. You can actually see it quite well. The best place to be, and the place that the shadow will last the longest, is the middle of the path. On the edges, it lasts only a couple of seconds, and in the middle, it lasts up to 3.5 minutes or so. So the closer you get to the middle, the longer you will be in that shadow. Now, there are some issues. In 2017, this happened. There was a solar eclipse that went all the way from South Carolina all the way to Oregon, and it was extremely well attended. Millions of people, probably tens of millions of people wanted to see this. A lot of parks and businesses set aside areas for people to park. They made plans in advance to allow people to go down there. However, that didn't solve the problem of everybody wanting to see it at the same time. This caused incredible traffic problems. I remember a number of my friends went down to see the eclipse down in southern Kentucky, and from Columbus to southern Kentucky is usually about 5 hours. It took them about 15 or 16 hours to drive back. I mean, the traffic was that bad. It was a really long, slow, sluggish day. So expect that there will be lots and lots of traffic, and plan in advance. If you want to see it, you're going to have to get to wherever you're going to go, whichever park or place of business you want to get to see it. You want to go really early so that you don't get stuck in traffic on the way and you end up missing that region of shadow. Because if you're not in that region of shadow, day does not turn into night. It's a cool experience, but it's not nearly as cool as being right in the heart. It's not that life-changing experience. Another factor to take into consideration is the date of the eclipse. Take note that it is April 8th of 2024. This right here is a map of the average cloudiness of the United States during that time. And you'll notice that there's a lot of sort of red region here in the Ohio area. In fact, 60, 70, 80% of the time in the region of the eclipse, it is cloudy. So 2 out of 3 times at least, you're not going to be able to see it because April showers. If you're interested in planning a trip for yourself, I'm doing this myself with a number of people from the John Glenn Astronomy Park. you might want to plan in a little bit of flexibility in your driving. So you may want to be able to plan on several different locations and pick the one that the satellite seems to show that it is going to be clear at. In general, the further south you go toward the border, you probably don't want to go here because not a real good place. But it is, if you go further south toward the Texas Mexico border, that tends to get a lot clearer on average. But the best thing to do is to, a couple days out before it's going to happen, plan your trip in advance. So let's take a look. This is the 2021 weather. This is what I didn't have the satellite map for 2021. So on April 8th, at exactly the eclipse time, this is what the sky looked like. You'll notice that Ohio had a lot of clouds, and down here in Texas and Arkansas, it was actually pretty clear. However, a year before that, it was clear everywhere. So Ohio was great 2 years ago on April 8th at exactly eclipse time. However, the year before that, it was cloudy. The year before that, it was clear. And you know what? It's a crapshoot. You know, roll the dice. You may see it. You may not see it. However, if you do get to see it, you will think of it as one of the most astonishing experiences of your life. It is really, really amazing. I'm going to see as many of these as I can before I shuffle off this mortal coil. And I hope that you get a chance to see it as well, because you will feel the same way. If you want to get a sense of how incredibly impactful these are, Zoom has a weird thing where it blocks the sound of any video that you play, so I am not able to play the sound for you. But go to YouTube and put in Solar Eclipse reaction in YouTube and just watch a bunch of videos. This one from China, I think, is a pretty good one. In China in 2009, the crowd goes nuts just hearing the cheers and the exclamations of delight, the kids screaming at how amazing it is, will convince you that this is something worth seeing. So I'm going to pass the mic on to the next person, and thank you for spending time with me. So
Thank you, Brad. Wow, that was fascinating. And okay, we have a couple of years to learn how to control the weather. So we appreciate that. I'm going to ask Matt MacLaren to join us. And hey, Matt, and I'm going to turn things over to Matt to talk about what's happening in the planning stages in Ohio.
And I see in the chat, there's some questions for Brad. I'm thinking we will go through all the questions with all the speakers at the end.
Yes.
Wonderful. Hey, I'll start off by saying Brad got the really fun part of this presentation today. He got the cool slides, and he's actually got me pumped up about the total eclipse being here in Ohio on April 8th, 2024, only about 14 months away. And when you think about this opportunity, it's going to bring a lot of people to the state of Ohio in April, which is a pretty good month for us to have more hotel rooms booked, more retail, restaurant, lodging, attractions, more tourism in the state. The reason I'm on today, I keep getting the questions, and we're thinking about it on how we will market the solar eclipse, the total eclipse that's happening in 2024, and when we'll start that marketing. So I wanted to share our thinking in hopes that you'll be able to tap into that and then be a part of what we're doing going forward. I want to start off by saying we participate in the 2024 Total Solar Eclipse Ohio Task Force. And Christen, that'll be speaking after me today, is a part of that task force as well. She'll be able to tell you more about what they do, but they get to think about it from both a marketing side and a public response side, as we're expecting a lot of people in towns that aren't used to seeing that many people on April 8th. From a marketing perspective, the event itself should be an attraction that fills the hotel rooms and the properties and the cities in the areas of the total eclipse. We don't think we're going to have any problem selling out the day of April 8th, 2024. So where we've started thinking about it is, how do we get people to come early and stay later? And there's some very good rationale behind why someone would want to come early and stay later. One of those main reasons, if you're in an area of the total eclipse, the path of totality, what they saw in 2017 were massive traffic jams and people trying to drive from one place to another to get there to see it. So we're hopeful that that come early, stay late message will get people to enjoy what Ohio has to offer and be here during the solar eclipse. As far as the timing of that message, we're 14 months away from the eclipse itself. We think that the eclipse itself, for those that are majorly interested in it, is enough of a draw that they'll start booking their rooms now. So we're not planning on doing any marketing in the next several months. What we're looking at doing, we'll participate with the state task force, and we'll help them with what they promote. They have a website already that we'll be able to direct people to. So you'll still see some information from us for those that are interested in coming for the eclipse. But the actual marketing, the actual helping of getting people here and getting people to come early and stay late, we're looking to start that 6 months out. And at that time frame, we'll be able to take a look and through our data, figure out what's been sold out, what hasn't been sold out, and probably do some targeted marketing to people that have booked for 1 or 2 day trips, encouraging them to stay longer. As we get closer to the eclipse on April 8th, we will ramp up our marketing as needed. If we have areas of the state that still have availability, we can help them out at that time, directing people in that area. But that's when you're really going to see that this time, basically next year, that January, February, March timeframe leading up to April 8th of when the eclipse will be a big focus of what we do. Prior to that, we're going to lean on the task force and their site to promote the information. And then we're going to work with them on a come early, stay late message that we will then ramp up about 6 months out, or better said, late fall of 2023. All of that also timelines out well for what we're doing because we have all of our resources working on Tourism Day, May 10th this year. Sign up for the booth at ohio.org if you haven't yet, and our spring summer campaign. And once that's up and running, that's what we're working on right now. Then we can start focusing on the stuff for the eclipse that would run late fall through the April 8th date. Melinda, that's what I wanted to share. Again, Brad got the exciting part today. I just wanted to share some of our thinking, and then happy to pass it off to Christen, who has a big job as the cities and the state are thinking about how you handle what could be record-sized crowds in smaller areas that aren't used to seeing those size crowds.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it, and I'll turn things over to Christen.
All right, good morning. Thank you, everyone. I'm super excited to be here. I'm super excited to share what we're doing at Ohio EMA and throughout the state to prepare for the eclipse. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to give a very high level overview of what we're doing, and then I will stick around for questions as well. Apologize, I think you should be able to see my screen. Can everybody see it?
You're good.
Okay. Fantastic. All right. So as Matt alluded to, we are really promoting a come early, stay late focus in order to mitigate against some of the things that Brad touched on in his presentation. So those traffic concerns, preparing communities for how to accommodate a large influx of people that they're not necessarily used to seeing. So in terms of what the state is doing, we do have the Solar Eclipse Planning Task Force, and that's a statewide task force that focuses on some of the efforts that we have going on to ensure that our state plans address what we're expecting for the eclipse. And the reason why this is so important is that Ohio is within a reasonable driving distance for a significant portion of the country. So we're expecting that people that want to see the eclipse will be traveling into Ohio. It's a great viewing location, but with that, there are just so many communities that we need to ensure are adequately prepared. We're looking at not only traffic issues, but also resource shortages. So have we thought about gasoline? Have we thought about grocery stores? Have we thought about how some communities may have one hospital, or they may not have any hospitals in their county, for instance? Those are the types of things, some communities have more gas stations, more grocery stores than others. So these are all considerations that we're focusing on with our task force. Our task force is broken down into 6 subcommittees, which I'll get to here in a second, but each one is focused on specific things that are likely to impact communities across the state. So we're looking at viewing, lodging, local support, transportation, and a whole host of others. Also, we are preparing to test our plans by engaging a myriad of stakeholders for tabletop exercises, drills, functional exercises, and things of that nature to see where our gaps are, how we can build capabilities, and hear what the concerns are across the state with our partners and our community members. And then again, we have our Eclipse website, and I'll get to that here in a second, but that's a resource that is open to everybody. It has some great things on there to promote that come early, stay late focus. So I just want to share who is on our task force. This is just a selection. We have a whole host of community members and stakeholders that we've involved in this. So we have the Salvation Army, we have the American Red Cross, we have our partners from Ohio State, NASA. We're really trying to get as many people involved in this as we can to get those different perspectives in our planning efforts and to just get a good selection of different areas of expertise as we prepare for this. So our Eclipse Planning Task Force is comprised of a Communications and Operations Subcommittee, a Health and Safety Subcommittee, Transportation, Viewing, Lodging, and Local Support, Resources and Logistics, as well as Education. And in terms of our Eclipse webpage, there are so many resources that can be found on here that are available for download. So when you are trying to promote the Eclipse, we have flyers there. We have flyers in different languages. We're really trying to take a whole community approach here and get everyone involved and make sure that people are aware of the Eclipse coming and what some of the impacts are. As discussed earlier, we're looking at traffic issues. So there may be people that aren't familiar with the Eclipse, and are they going to pull off the side of the road as they're driving down the highway because it gets dark and they don't know what's going on? Is there going to be some concern there? So we're really trying to get that awareness piece out for that reason. So our Eclipse webpage also includes information regarding how to view the eclipse safely. We have an interactive map as well for searching events and resources. So we have GIS maps that are fantastic, very usable, that show where there are parks in the state, where you can view the eclipse, where there are museums and other attractions that are significant and specific to Ohio. So with that, I encourage everybody to visit the webpage. There is some fantastic stuff on there that's really useful. And with that, I'll keep it short and sweet. I'll be around for questions. This QR code can be used to access the website as well. So with that, thank you again. It was really, really a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Kristen. Okay, can I ask all the speakers to turn their videos back on? And Kristen, let me make sure we got this and I'll put it in the chat. So the URL is eclipse.ohio.gov. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
All right, I am putting this in the chat if I can spell, and we'll be good to go. Well, I found that super fascinating. We do have questions. Let me run through some of these. And if you have additional questions, keep putting in the chat. So I did get, we did get a response last we talked, Kristen. Someone wanted for you to review the 6 subcommittees again.
Sure, absolutely. So it's, and I can put that in the chat as well, but it's communications and operations, health and safety, transportation, viewing, lodging, and local support, resources and logistics, and education. And I'll drop that in the chat here as well.
Great, thank you. We also had a question about photography. And wanting to know if there was a resource for getting images prior to the eclipse to use in promotions, any special equipment that's needed. And I wonder if you could address that, Brad.
Yeah, as far as getting images of an eclipse, to use in your promotional materials ahead of time, I have a few that I'd be happy to provide, but I mean, Wikimedia is an excellent source. There is plenty of eclipse imagery on publicly available payment-free sites. I use those type of things all the time for my presentations. There's no lack of publicly available information. NASA has a lot of good freely available imagery that you could use for your media and your marketing and that kind of thing. That's fairly easy to acquire. As far as taking your own imagery, if it is your job to do so, and it would be a good idea for you to take a picture that you could then use in subsequent publications and that kind of thing. In general, it's not that difficult to take a picture of a total solar eclipse. What you're going to do with the eclipse, how you're going to take a picture depends on whether or not it's the partial phases, which is where the moon is not totally covering the sun and the brilliant sun is sticking out from behind. In that case, you probably want to put just like a neutral density filter on the end of your camera lens. If your camera lens looks a little more like this than this little short thing, it's also better. I mean, the sun is pretty small in the sky. If you can take a picture of the moon and see the details on the moon, the sun will be big enough in the sky because it's the same size. I generally use a really long telephoto lens, like an 800 millimeter lens. That brings the sun big enough. Once the eclipse is total and the corona, that beautiful shimmery atmosphere of the sun is sticking out from behind, and you can finally see it, the exposures on your camera actually change. You take longer exposures, maybe 1 or 2 seconds to get the whole thing, because it's not as bright as the sun, and you change the exposures. Now, if you're seeing a total solar eclipse for the very first time and your goal is not to take pictures for your job, I would heartily recommend that you don't take pictures. Just look at it, because the actual sight of a solar eclipse is something that you cannot capture 100% in a photograph. It never really looks like any photograph, because because of the difference in brightness, you can't get it in a camera, and it's just so much more beautiful to behold with the eye than with your camera. And if you spend that 3 minutes and 30 seconds trying to futz with your camera and get the settings right and your hand shaking and everything like that, you're going to miss the event and you're going to regret it, because the next one in the United States doesn't occur until 2045. So I would recommend just put the camera away, look at it with your eyes, cry, have your experience, and then let the people who've done it 15 times before take a picture of it and enjoy their pictures. So
Thanks,
that would be
Brad.
my advice.
That's great.
Okay.
But speaking of looking at it with your eyes, Christen, are there, she's smiling, she knows what's coming. So we do have classes. Is this task force planning to make those available? If so, how? Could you talk a little bit about getting supplies of the classes?
So on our website, and that's a great question. So on our website, there is information on viewing it safely. And that's where you can find information on reputable vendors for eclipse glasses. So we're doing our best to keep that as up to date as possible. I know that is a really important piece. So we try to keep that updated on our website for everyone to view.
Okay, great. Someone else had a question. I actually had a very similar question. Start with theirs first. Matt, Christen, they want to know where they can send any events or information about local eclipse related activities, who they should send that to, when they should start sending it, etc.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. For us, it's the same methodology as any other events that you're currently creating. Juliana Cusid on our team, she's the one spending most of the time in the task force with us, and that collects that information. And then also encourage you to create a listing for that event on ohio.org. I'll go ahead and put in the chat here Juliana's email and then the ohio.org. But it's very similar. Most of the people that are part of OTA have heard me talk before and give out the information about creating listings and sending us event info. Same thing for this, same process.
And it's okay to even start sending that information now if they have it.
Yeah, that's fine. We're not, you can even create a listing right now if you like. We do think people will start searching here at that 1 year time frame. I mean, we're already talking about it, but we really probably won't do the actual promotions till about 6 months out, but it's still good to have that information.
So, and related to that, one of my question was, do you advise folks on this call to start putting together 2 to 3 day packages surrounding the eclipse that could be marketed? And if so, would that be something that you would be willing to promote on the site as well, to try to like package it so that folks don't have to worry about where to go and what am I going to do if I come 2 days early or stay a day later, that we could further incentivize it by creating packages that include lodging and maybe a couple attraction tickets, to just further incentivize folks to make their plans earlier and to spread out their stay. What do you think about that idea?
Yeah, we got to remember half the state, roughly half, is in the path of totality and the other half's not. So from our perspective, we're going to lean on the path of totality and then other things to do across the state. When you're looking at the visitors bureaus, places like Cleveland, hey, I think your main message is come see the solar eclipse, stay for a baseball game, rock hall, everything else. If you're in Marietta, you got a little more work to do if you want to try and tie something into this. So I think each is going to have to figure out their own. But I can see us as part of our promotions encouraging things to do across the state and probably coming up with some type of itinerary that is space related in a lot of ways, to astronomy related in a lot of ways.
Question for Brad. What will the eclipse look like if it's cloudy?
Well, it depends on how cloudy. I'm looking out my window right now, and I see that in Columbus it's actually quite cloudy, and ostensibly it's daytime. I cannot see the sun. If you can't see the sun through the clouds, like on a normal day, the eclipse will be the same way. I mean, it's like if it's cloudy enough where you wouldn't ordinarily see the disk of the sun, then you won't see anything. You will notice the lighting change a little bit. What'll happen is it'll get dark, and then during the totality, if you happen to be in totality, it will go from feeling like daytime to feeling like a half an hour after sunset for a couple minutes, and then it'll start to get brighter again at the end. You'll just sense the change in brightness. But yeah, if it's too cloudy to actually see the disk of the sun, then no amount of telescopes or eclipse glasses or anything will affect your will give you the ability to actually see it. So personally, I mean, obviously this is a group that is very interested in getting people to come to Ohio, and I hardly recommend people come to Ohio. However, having some flexibility in where you're going to go within Ohio is probably a really good thing, because it may be clear in Cleveland but not in Dayton. So it's you want to get yourself to a place where you're at least able to see through gaps in the clouds.
Question, and I think this is for Christen. The Ohio Total Eclipse logo you shared in the slide, is that for use?
So our official logo is on our website, the Eclipse website, eclipse.ohio.gov, and that's in the resources tab at the top of the screen. So you can access that. I believe it's saved a couple different ways, PDF, and as an image itself, I believe. And
they're permitted to use that as they promote any eclipse events?
Yes.
You. Question, I think, Matt, you answered this, but Nick wants to know, is there anything planned at the state level for a year-out promotion this year?
The stuff we do through the task force and their website is what's available for the year out, but there's no paid marketing a year out. We're looking to do any type of that 6 months out.
Question from Olivia. If your location is not in the middle path, right, but on the outside lines, is it still appropriate for those locations to be considering themselves a good place to view? Which I think is a really, you may not be on the green line, maybe you're on the yellow line. Is that still an experience that is worthy of them sharing?
Yes, I would say, as long as you're within the yellow lines. The green line is the best. That's the place where it's going to be the longest and that kind of thing. But from the yellow line in, I mean the outer portion of the region where it's totally shadowed on in, it actually drops. The amount of time that you get increases very quickly, and then it sort of slowly approaches the total maximum at the center. So within about 10% of the way in, you're like halfway to the total amount of time at that point. So as long as you're within about 15, if you're inside of the total shadow line by about 10 miles or so, you're going to get a good view of the eclipse. So yeah, I don't think you have to worry about it. Anybody that's relatively within that shadow line should be able to see it pretty well.
Yeah, this actually ties into the marketing strategy. So we're not worried about April 8th selling out across Ohio. That's part of the reason we're not putting money into it. We know people are coming, whether we tell them it's going to be here or not, they're finding it's going to sell out. The opportunity here is to get people to come early and stay later. And if we can then identify, which there's wonderful tools now to do so, who's already booked, and be able to send them marketing to extend their stay, we think that's a great opportunity. That's why we're looking at 6 months out. Also, from what Brad just talked about, the places to view, you're going to have more people that can view something from the Cleveland area. They can actually stay in the Cleveland area, or quite honestly, Northwest Ohio for some of the smaller towns. So if you're on the edges, you may be looking at yourself as a great alternative for overnight accommodations or accommodations. Even though people may be driving the 30 miles into the path of totality, they can still stay at your place because most of the places in the path of totality are going to be sold out. So I'd consider that for those that are on the edges or not too far away from the path of totality.
Yeah, I was going to recommend the same thing, that they don't have to be like in the shadow. They don't have to be sleeping in the shadow, as long as you're within a reasonable driving distance to get to it. Assuming traffic and that kind of thing, you're probably good to go.
So your advice is saying you don't have to be out there promoting this. They're going to find you. What you should spend the time doing is perhaps the packaging or creating maybe something to keep people in the area before and afterwards to minimize some of that congestion. Is that what I mean?
If you're in the path of totality, that's exactly right. And if you're outside of it, how do you encourage them to book with you, spend the accommodation, spend the night, still do stuff in your area, knowing that they're there to go drive that 30 miles into the totality to see it?
How do folks get linked in if you are monitoring some of the lodging and you're monitoring occupancy? How do they get linked in with you all into that system? Is it already set up? Can you talk a little bit about how you plan to do that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to come back on in the fall to take a look at that. And actually, Linda, that's something I want to work hand in hand with you to help deliver to your members too. We get credit card data now, and we get information through Smith Travel Research on hotel bookings. There's certain ways that can help guide us that we'll be looking into.
Yeah, that's such a smart idea.
Yeah, we get some data from Expedia. We haven't put the full plan together yet.
Okay.
But it's amazing how many data points that people are coming to me with that will help us identify who we want to target.
All right. Do you all have any questions for the folks on the call? Okay. All right. Last call. It's 11:48. Last call for any questions in the chat. We'll give it a second. So I find it really exciting. And Brad, You're gonna be a man in demand. I'm telling you, like that was really exciting. And it's got me excited for the experience. So I really appreciate your enthusiasm. All right, we'll do that. Let's see.
I hope we have clear skies.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, yeah. Oh, we got a bunch of them. There are specific demographics that are linked to those folks who tend to come visit for an eclipse. It's a good question.
1 to 101, I think.
other words-
I think if you're old enough to actually sense that something's going on in the world, I would say that neonate infants probably wouldn't be really into it, but anybody else would probably be into it. I was on a trip once and there was a blind person, and they just wanted to experience the vibe of the crowd and the change of the sounds from the animals was interesting. I mean, the insects started to do their nightly calls, and the birds started to chirp in the way that they chirp in the evening, and they could actually sense that. And so it was worthwhile to them. They were blind, they weren't able to actually see it. So
that's fascinating. From your experience, having gone to a few of these, is there anything that stands out to you as something that maybe someone has done that created a really great experience? Like you showed the blanket or the white sheet on the ground. Was that something someone else brought, or was that something the venue did? What's your advice for venues who hope to attract people to experience this?
What I found was the most helpful was for someone to be able to take all of the administrative stuff out of your hands and just allow you to enjoy it, give you the chance to set up and not worry about any of the details, because it's such an emotional experience. You don't remember things that are, you don't remember to do things, like, oh, I gotta get my camera out, I gotta get my lawn chair set up, I gotta get, I forgot my eclipse glasses and everything like that. Having someone else do all the planning for you is really important. And then just letting the person enjoy it is probably the most helpful. I found that the pre-planned trips that I took 2 of them, were amazingly well done, and I didn't feel stressed, and I just laid back in my lawn chair and just soaked it all in. It was really well done. That would be my advice, would be just to do what you can to take any sort of concerns out of the hands of the people that visit, and that's probably the most helpful thing.
Do a lot of folks attend these by booking with a group? I mean, it brings up a really good point. So
it's a very popular thing. The one that I went on had about 60 people. The one I went on in Turkey was about 60 people, and the one I went on in Zimbabwe was about 40 people. In 2017, I didn't do a group. We just drove to Nebraska and saw it. But yeah, a lot of people pre-plan these things because of the the concern about getting a good hotel room, the concern about with the Turkey and the Zimbabwe one that I did, they pre-planned a whole trip around it, which was amazing. We saw a lot of sites in the region. It kind of took you to places that you wouldn't ordinarily go, which was kind of neat. And I think there will be people from New York coming into Ohio for the first time, and a really good thing to do would be to set them up with a bunch of different interesting things to do in Ohio after the eclipse is over. Once they've seen those type of things, create a little package where you take them to a bunch of different locations, and I think that would be highly rewarding. It's a nice way of getting people to go someplace that they wouldn't ordinarily go, because eclipses don't, they go where they go. You have to go to them rather than and sometimes they end up in some odd locations, and for a person in New York, Ohio is going to be an unfamiliar location. So
all right, y'all know where I'm heading with this. If you're attending Heartland, you better really think about this. It's in, Heartland's in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. it's not too late for you to put some thought into marketing 2024 this year, and an eclipse package. I think that's a brilliant idea. Okay, couple presentation slides. Are you guys willing, Christen, Brad, to share your deck with us?
Sure.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yes. So great preview. Does anyone have a packet of info that could be shared with hotels, restaurants, businesses to make them aware? Is there any
I can jump in here. So we have flyers that you can download in the same resources tab on our website. They're very visual heavy. So it's not necessarily a packet of information, but definitely feel free to explore that, see if that's something that's useful and would meet the need. But we do have those available for download.
Thank you, Christen. Once again, the time of day around 3:15. Is that what we're hearing?
Yeah, that's correct. It's about, but the partial phases will start an hour and a half earlier than that. Generally, people are more interested in the before part than the after part, because once the totality is over, it's not as interesting to see the same thing that you saw going in. But yeah, I would say plan on people being wherever they're going to be from 1 to 4, or something like that, I would say.
And someone did recommend having some periodic meetings, virtual or in person, maybe a couple more leading up to this. We're game to help make that happen. If that's something folks are interested in, put it in the chat, reach out to us. I think as this was such a great launching point for the discussion, I think as we get closer, we'll have more information. And so we'll make sure everyone keeps posted around that. All right, last call for any questions. Lots of thank yous to our panelists. Give it 1 second. It's given us so much to think about. And yeah, here someone says, it'd be great to see how to coordinate regionally on some of these things. So awesome. Okay, we will do everything we can. I want to thank Brad and Matt and Christen again for joining us and for spending the time to get us, not only excited about what's coming, but also incredibly informed. So we appreciate that. Have a great weekend. To all our participants, thanks for your interest. Always thank you for your support. And we will talk soon. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.